The requirements to attempt Bandos is to have first completed the quest Death Plateau and Troll Stronghold. However, if you have the Gomel's Hilt teleport, this can bypass these requirements. And here are the minimum stats I would recommend. But buffing up your range and defense will obviously make things a lot easier for you, and having higher agility will be better since we're going to be doing a ton of running during the entire duration of this fight. To reach Bandos in the God Wars dungeon, first you have to get to Trollheim, of which you have several different teleport options. You can use the Trollheim spell directly, create a Trollheim teleport tab using a redirection scroll, or use the Gomel's Hilt, which teleports you directly in front of the gate. The medium hilt provides 5 daily teleports, and the hard version offers unlimited. If you did teleport to Trollheim through a traditional method, run down the mountain past these trolls while protecting from range. You'll then encounter this boulder that can either be pushed with 60 strength or bypassed with 60 agility. This boulder is also where the Gomel's Hilt will teleport you to. Before you can actually enter the God Wars dungeon, you need to navigate the stormy area above. If you haven't completed the quest, Making Friends with My Arm, you'll have to endure the storm and the accompanying stat drain on each visit. However, if you have completed the quest, you can build a fire here that will permanently remove the blizzard. Once beyond the boulder, run past the wolves until you reach a hole in the ground. If it is your first time here, you will need to use a rope to enter it. Now that you've descended down into the God Wars dungeon, you'll be witnessing an epic battle of all the different gods' minions. They'll be aggressive to you unless you're wearing their respective gods' clothing, like God D'hide or Blessings. The God Wars dungeon is divided into 5 different sections, dedicated to Saradomin, Zamorak, Bandos, Armadil, and Zaros. Each of these different sections will have a unique gimmick to enter and a boss at the very end. And for Bandos, this boss is named General Graardor. Inside each boss room includes an altar that is usable every 10 minutes as long as you're out of combat. To reach the general, you're going to head west after entering the dungeon, and you'll come upon a door with a giant gong on it. To get through this door, you need to strike it with a hammer, and have your ears bleed as you listen to this wonderful sound effect. Continue north, and the general lies beyond this door. To actually enter the boss door though, you're going to need between 15 and 40 follower kills. Now this depends how many tiers of the combat task you have completed, but 40 will be the default. You can also bypass this requirement with the use of an ecumenical key that can be obtained from the wilderness version of the God Wars dungeon, but for Bandos it really just isn't worth it because the 40 KC is both easier and faster to go for. If you do happen to die in the boss room, your gravestone appears right outside the door. Lastly, if you're an Ironman, you get to access a private Ironman instance. This prevents you from being crashed and is a really nice quality of life feature for Ironman. But only one Ironman can be in this instance or one group of group Ironmen per world. This is indicated by this torch here. If it's lit, another Ironman is already in the instance, requiring you to world hop until you find an unlit torch. Getting the KC for Bandos is super easy. Head to either of these 2 areas and make sure to equip a Bandos item and a Zamorak item. Here are a list of some popular items you can use to protect yourself from these 2 gods. Once you reach one of these 2 spots, just kill goblins until you reach your required KC. You can also attack the ogre that is being attacked by the weird dinosaur thing as well. Once you have your KC, you can actually smuggle in an extra item by doing a hammer drop trick on the door. The goblins drop hammers at a 1 out of 8 drop chance, so we can use this to our advantage. First, drop a piece of food, pick up a hammer from the goblins, go through the door, drop another piece of food on the opposite side, return through the door, then pick up your first dropped piece of food, enter back through the door, drop your hammer, and then pick up your second piece of food. If you don't want to bother with this, you can just bring a hammer, but the extra inventory space is pretty nice. To explain the gear, I'm going to be using the progression charts provided by the wiki. To use these, simply use the best item that you have available in each gear slot category. These can be really handy in figuring out what's the best gear combination for your specific account progression. There will be a link in the description below to this wiki strategy page so you can see the charts for yourself if you want some extra information. But I will also provide some traditional low, mid, high setups if you would rather just follow that. So we're going to be taking a ranged approach to gear, but there are 2 different routes you can take. The 4 tick where we're going to use crystal armor and either a crystal bow and a bofa, or the 5 tick crossbow method. The tactics we will use avoid most damage except from the minions, so we can focus mostly on DPS. Overall though, the crystal route is your best option by a country mile if you have access to it. The group method will require 1 person to tank, and they're going to want to maximize range and mage defense as you're going to be praying melee the duration of the fight. The other player or players are going to use their best range gear they have, but if you're lacking in the range department, melee is a viable option as well. The contents of your inventory can vary a lot depending on what items you have unlocked, but if you have access to Sarah brews, bringing a few can be really helpful, along with the restore potion to counter the stat drain, in a ratio of 3 to 1. It's also worth noting that General Graardor drops super restores during the fight at a rate of 1 out of 15 and at 3 at a time. Additionally, the minions drop sharks and chili potatoes, so with reasonably quick kill times, you can sustain yourself for a long time on these drops. Bones to Peaches tablets are really great for increased sustainability, especially if you aren't getting many drops from the minion kills. If you do end up doing the crossbow method I'm going to show you later, you will need stamina potions. However, for other methods they won't be necessary but can be pretty helpful while learning. Include a few ranging potions as well. If you are planning on using thralls, bring the runes required to summon them and the Book of the Dead. The book doesn't need to be equipped, however, it just needs to be in your inventory. As for a special attack weapon, it really depends on what you have access to, but if you do have a blowpipe, it's highly recommended for faster minion kills and the self-healing through its special attack. If you don't have it, these weapons can be good alternatives, although they might just be harder to obtain than the blowpipe. If you are in a group and you do have access to a BGS or a Dragon Warhammer, these are really helpful in lowering the boss's defenses, but obviously aren't necessary. Lastly, bring your preferred method of teleporting to Trollheim. Bandos has two basic attacks, a melee and a ranged special attack. He has a 2/3 chance of doing his melee attack with a max hit of 60, and a 1/3 chance of doing his ranged attack that is shot at every player in the room and hits between 15 and 35 damage on successful hits. However, this can be prayed against, and despite it being a ranged attack, he will actually only perform it when the player is within melee range. There will also be 3 minions within the boss room that will all 3 at once randomly switch between attacking who's ever attacking the general. The Fortec method can only be done with either a crystal bow or a bofa, and we'll be employing a red X tactic. This allows us to run underneath Bandos without triggering his attacks. The exact reason behind why this works is a little complicated, but essentially red Xing is when you click on an object or an item to move your character instead of clicking a tile. In our case, we're going to be alternating between clicking the door and the altar. You can see here that the game is going to want to prioritize horizontal movements over diagonal ones in its pathing, so we can use this to our advantage and run in a straight line between the door and the altar. The tiles we have marked here might look a little confusing at first, but basically, when you're heading towards the altar, you're going to want to attack the general each time your true tile lands on the attacking square labeled A for altar. And then when you're running back towards the door, attack on the tiles labeled D for door. These tiles and all future tiles I show can be accessed by using the Tile Packs plugin in RuneLite. So let's go over the cycle of each kill. First, you're going to summon your thrall right before the boss spawns if you're planning on using them. Second, enable your protection prayer. You can protect from melee while you're learning the method because it's likely you're going to make some mistakes, and Bandos' melee attack is far more dangerous than his ranged one. But once you get comfortable, you definitely want to switch to using protect from range to completely avoid any damage Bandos can throw at you. Third, immediately attack the boss when he spawns, and then click the altar directly after. Fourth, once your true tile lines up with the first red tile, attack the boss and click the next red tile. And fifth, upon reaching the last red tile, attack the boss and click the green tile. Now you will need to wait an extra tick to start the next cycle for the attacks to line up properly. So while you're learning it, it's fine to wait here for a moment, but once you feel more comfortable, you can actually use a control click to walk from the last red tile to the first green tile. Walking not only makes this alignment happen naturally so you don't have to think about it, but it will also save you some run energy in the process. Sixth, once you reach this green tile closest to the altar, click the boss and immediately click the door. You will now repeat the same process with the green tiles heading back in the other direction, attacking on each green tile and walking the last transition to the red tile or waiting an extra tick. Now your rotation will start over again and you will cycle like this until you've defeated the boss. Here is it played back again at normal speed. Now if it's the first kill of your trip, upon entering the boss room, immediately run to this yellow tile. Attack the boss once you reach it, and then run to the upper row of tiles. From this point on, your fight will continue as normal, but use the upper row. This upper row is only used during the first kill of a trip. Now this is a tick-perfect method, so if you do happen to make a mistake, which you inevitably will, you can still fix the rotation. To do this, sit next to the altar and red X on the door at the exact same tick that the boss attacks you. Now for my Ironman out there, if you're planning on using a rune crossbow here, it is viable, but expect slow kills. This method has some pretty tight windows, but it's essentially the same idea as the Saradomin solo method if you're familiar with that. We're going to be running around the perimeter of the room, attacking on each yellow tile and praying range. The exception to this is, at the start of a fresh run, you'll run to this corner tile and pray melee as the boss will hit you and his melee attack is both more common and much more dangerous. After that, you're going to run past this first tile, not attacking on it, then attack the boss once you reach the northwesternmost corner. You will only ignore this tile on the first rotation per kill, but you will attack him on that tile every rotation thereafter. Every subsequent kill, you're going to start on this tile marked here. You'll pray range, then run to the southwestern corner as soon as the boss spawns. Do not attack the boss when he spawns, however. Attack once you reach the southwestern tile to start the cycle. Also remembering to skip that next tile during this first rotation. This method requires much more running, and the kill times are significantly longer, so stamina definitely will be necessary. The group method is obviously significantly easier than either solo method, and the basic idea is this. One player focuses on tanking the boss, while the others deal as much damage as possible with range or melee. This works because as long as the tanker attacks the boss first, and maintains attacking the boss, the general won't switch aggro to another player. The tanking role can be intense, but it's ultimately pretty simple. You're going to start each fight praying melee and speccing the boss if you've brought a spec weapon, then immediately run underneath the boss. My preferred way of doing this is to shift click to walk under the boss. You can enable this functionality with the Menu Entry Swapper plugin. To turn it on, click the shift click walk here option under the NPC swaps category. Whether you're using a 4-tick weapon like a whip or a 5-tick weapon like the Fang, the basic idea is the same with some minor differences. You attack the boss and then hide underneath him until you can attack him again and repeat. The only difference is for the 4-tick weapon, you can attack the boss twice before needing to step underneath him. The tank's job is not to do damage, but to keep aggro, so being tick perfect really isn't necessary for this role, but if you want to aspire for perfection, I recommend using the Metronome plugin. You can set this to be any amount of ticks you want, so match it to your weapon's attack speed, and then you can use this to know when it's appropriate to step out and attack him. The last thing you want to keep in mind for tanking is when it is appropriate to eat, especially if you're using brews. A common mistake here would be to run under the boss and drink 3 doses of brew and 1 restore before attacking again. Waiting this long will almost guarantee you'll lose aggro, which as the tank is obviously very bad. So you want to time your eating with your attacks. Just drink 1 or 2 doses of brew at a time. As again, you're the tank, your DPS is valuable, but it is not your main role. And the stat drain from brews only affects your offensive stats, so just take your time and make sure to prioritize maintaining your aggro. The attacker role is about as simple as it gets, and there's really only one thing you can do to mess it up. Start each fight by enabling your Protect from Range prayer and your Offensive prayer. We are protecting from range because, as I said before, Bandos' range attack will hit everyone in the room. Then summon your Thrall if you brought them with you. Now this is the most important part. Wait for your tank to attack the boss before you begin attacking so you don't pull aggro before the tank does. Now if you're a little trigger happy and happen to pull the aggro first, put Protect from Melee on and immediately run underneath the boss. You're just going to hide underneath him in timeout, thinking about your mistakes until the tank pulls aggro back. As long as you don't attack the boss, he will eventually switch aggro. Aside from dealing DPS, your only real job as an attacker is to give your tank any extra supplies when they need them and try to only heal yourself through Bones to Peaches and special attacks if possible. Whether you're soloing or in a group, the minions are going to be your main source of healing. Between their food drops, using Bones to Peaches spells, Guthins, or blood spells, they will be how you sustain your trips. If you are in a group, these minions will randomly switch aggro throughout the fight, so once the boss dies, they will stay aggroed onto whoever they were last focused on. The other players can turn off their protection prayers as they're not going to switch aggro again after the boss is dead. Prioritize killing the mage, then melee, then ranger. As the tank, you're going to be most susceptible to magic damage, but once the mage is dead, the ranger can deal the most damage, so prioritize your protection prayers against him. And as an attacker, just can't protect from range. Another more slightly advanced technique you can do to mitigate some damage here is off-ticking the minions. If you're unfamiliar with this concept, the basic idea is to switch your prayers with the attacks, so you cycle between them and never take any damage from either. You can off-tick all 3 if they happen to be naturally lined up for it, but it's pretty difficult. The minions won't always be naturally set up for off-ticking, but it's something to keep an eye out for to take advantage of when you can. Bandos has almost no unique drop that isn't useful, making him a really fun boss to grind for as every drop feels exciting. Each individual piece of his armor all drops at a rate of 1 out of 381, giving you a 1 out of 127 chance to get any piece, which is pretty favorable odds. The hilt is his most rare unique at a rate of 1 out of 508 and is a major unlock as the spec weapon is used in a ton of places all over Gielinor. Aside from that, you can get Godsword shards at a rate of 1 out of 254 for any shard or 1 out of 262 for a specific one. His normal loot is also pretty nice as he drops a lot of alkables and good supplies for Ironman like Snapdragon Seeds, coal, and magic logs. And with that, you should have everything you need to defeat General Graardor. But before you go, check out this wild clip. Oh! What? I just got a Bandos chestplate from a minion, dude.
What?
Are you f***ing kidding me?
Bro, that's insane. What's the chance on that? 1 in 16,000.
What?
1 in 16,000.
What the hell?